If you were to ask me which are the two biggest rocks in the leadership jar, as it were, for a pioneer leader, I would say it's vision and culture. And I knew very, very early on that vision was important, but because I was slow on the uptake of many things, it took me ages to work out how important culture was. And vision is where we are going on our journey, and culture is what we need to be like in order to get there. And I just want to share with you two things about culture. First of all, in this principle, why it's important and what it is. And secondly, in the next principle, a very simple process that we have devised that is about setting culture in your team or plant, community, whatever. And let me start by giving you a quote from a guy called Louis V. Gerstner, who's got to be American, who is the former CEO of IBM. And this is what he said. He said, "Until I came to IBM, I probably would have told you that culture was just one among several important elements in any organization's makeup and success, along with vision, strategy, marketing, financials, and the rest. I came to see in my time at IBM that culture isn't just one aspect of the game, it is the game." This culture thing is massive to you as a leader. It will go a long way to working out whether this plant or community vision succeeds or not. It really is that big. And a simple definition of culture is the ideas and customs and social behavior of a group of people, but a sort of cooler and even simpler definition, as someone once famously said, culture is what we do around here. Culture in a team or community or plant is the definition of what we do around here. And culture is intangible. It springs from what we hold important, not from the rhetoric, but from the reality, from actually what is true. It is pervasive. It's like water. It creeps into every aspect of your group or organization, community. It's every outworking of your team or community or group demonstrates its culture. People encounter culture like smells. I don't know where that smell comes from, but I like it. I don't know where that smell comes from, but I don't like it. It's difficult to describe. It's not difficult to encounter. Culture, like vision, has a particularity about it. This team has a culture. A community has a culture. This is what we do around here. Culture is influenced by detail. In fact, it is the details that other people read to interpret and understand your culture. This is so important, I'm going to say it again. It is the details that other people read to interpret and understand your culture. It is why in the 40-year history of setting culture amongst the Israelites, you will notice those stories are crammed full of detail. The Pentateuch are amongst the most detailed books in all of Scripture. And because this is true, one of the key principles underpinning culture is intentionality. Healthy cultures never happen by accident. Culture is a mixture of things that we allow and what we create. Culture happens whether we want it to or not. It has happened already in your team or plant, community, whatever. Whether you wanted it to or not, it has already happened. And so a vital aspect of leadership is to be intentional about it, to decide what you want the culture to be like, and then take steps to embed it. And because culture happens whether you want it to or not, if you don't set culture as a leader, somebody else will always. That is why vision and culture are the two kind of key aspects of leadership. It doesn't matter who holds the title. The real leaders of any organization or group or team or plant, whatever, are the vision holders and the culture setters. And a key aspect of intentionality, as we shall see later, is to move from principle to practice. the language is because we feel this is important, therefore we will do this. It is ultimately, as we said before, it is details and actions that define culture, not the principles themselves. And the final thing that I want to say about culture in the short principle is that it takes time to implement or change. So along with being intentional, be patient. We need to keep at it. The Israelites took 40 years over this, and even then there were some fundamental reasons why it didn't stick, as we shall look at later on. You won't set culture in 2 hours. It ain't going to happen, but you will begin a journey that will result in something absolutely fundamental. As a community or a plant or a team, this isn't just one aspect of the game, it is the game. So let's start now by looking at a fairly simple process of working through what culture will look like in your team or community or plant. And this will need to be done with your team. These people that you have carefully chosen to actually go with you on this journey. You can't set culture by yourself. And this process has 4 stages. And for every stage, I will describe it a little bit. Every stage will have a key question and a key word, and I'll briefly talk through those. So the first stage is this. Culture always begins with purpose or vision. Vision and culture are inherently linked. They are the 2 main focuses of leadership. As I said before, vision is where we are going, and culture is what we need to be like to enable us to get there. And the key question for this first stage is, where are we heading? What will it look like when we get there? And the key word for this is we. If vision is not shared, then culture is not owned. And by shared, I don't just mean agreed, even though I do mean that, but each one is taking a share, as it were, in seeing this whole vision come to reality. You're putting your back into it, taking up the yoke. That's what shared means. And it's important to say that culture makes no sense at all without vision. Culture must be about vision, or else it ends up being about personal taste. Culture ends up being about what I like rather than where we are going. Culture makes no sense without vision, and vision is weakened by bad culture. Culture can help or hinder where you're trying to get to. You cannot begin talking about culture without identifying vision. As I said before, culture, like vision, has a real particularity about it. Everything that you are looking to establish culture in, it needs a unique vision. Every team, every community, every group, whether it's a sort of knitting group or a church plant anywhere, it has to start with purpose and vision. It has to be particular. For instance, the vision for your leadership team is going to be different for your vision for your whole plant. 2 different things. Everything that you're looking to establish culture in has to have a unique purpose. First stage. Second stage is moving on to principle, or what matters. And the key question for this is, in order to achieve this vision, what are those things that matter, that are important? What are the agreed principles and characteristics that are vital? And the key word for this is agreed. Again, we must agree together what matters. Unless there is agreement in a team or community or plan, there will be no ownership. Culture will become an act of coercion and not of cooperation, and you cannot afford that or live with that. And so this is where you start to do some work in this group or community or team. And here's how I would suggest that you do it practically, but of course you work out your own methods. At this point, I would go around the room and ask everybody to come up with a one-word description of a value or principle that matters to them. And at this stage, you tell them that they don't need to think this out or think too hard. In fact, the more instinctive the better it is. And what we are looking at are one-word descriptions or characteristics or values about things that really matter. Purely as an example, you might say, in order to achieve our vision of a really effective plant, doing whatever it is, what is important to us is that we are, say, prayerful. And as you go around the room, everyone needs to say one of these principles. It might be one that has already been said, that's fine, but everyone's got to say one. And all of them will sort of go up on your flip chart or screen, whatever. At this stage, it doesn't matter how long your list is, apart from it needs to be more than the magic total of 7. And I'll say why it needs to be more than that in a minute. Once you have all your words up on a screen or flip chart, just before you get to work on this list, ask people if there's anything that needs explaining from each of these words. Are we clear what each of these words mean? Tell them that we will later work out what they mean to us, but in terms of clarity of understanding, is it clear what each of these words mean? And the reason that you want more than 7 of these principles or values is ultimately you will end up with a list somewhere between 5 and 7 of these principles. You will want enough of them to be meaningful, but because all of them will ultimately involve action, this process will be meaningless if you have too many. It's the old adage that if everything is important, nothing is important. And it is vital that you have more than 7 of these principles of values, because it is extremely important to eliminate something. Collectively, you must be involved in making a choice about what is important, not simply accepting what has arisen. You've got to eliminate something. So at this point, everybody needs to make a copy of this list that you've generated, and it probably will be quite a long one. And the homework for this group is to go away and prayerfully look at this list and to choose 7 of these characteristics that they feel are important to achieve the vision. You ask yourself this question: why is this important? Is this vital to achieving our vision? It's vital that they seek God's face on this. Give them enough time for this, but not too long, a week, sort of 2 weeks maximum. And when you reconvene, you will go around the room and you'll ask people to list and choose which of those 7 from that big long list they have prayerfully worked through. And on the flip chart, you would simply maybe just sort of mark up against each word that has been chosen. And after you go through this in your team, you will find there are probably 2 or 3 that, or more maybe, that are definitely in. You'll find a whole bunch of them that are definitely out, haven't got any votes or very few. There will likely be 2 or 3 that are very sort of close together, and you will need to work out together how you choose some and then eliminate the others. You will need to end up between 5 and 7 of these principles. 5 is good, 5 is better, 7 is absolute maximum. This is a very important stage, because you are beginning to decide together what kind of community or team or plant, whatever, you will look like. And there will be some things in there that each person will be naturally drawn to, and some in that list that they'll be less naturally drawn to. Some you might not even have voted for at all. But hear me on this. Because you do this collectively, you will all have to own this. This is yours, all of it. And normally this is the kind of opt-in, opt-out stage. This is that stage where you look each other in the eye and say, are you in? This is what this thing is going to look like. Are you in or are you out? Because if you can't, commit to this journey, this community, this team is not for you. And I'll say a bit more about this stage in a few minutes in the next principle. But if you don't have agreement, culture will become an act of coercion and not of cooperation. You cannot afford that. So we've talked through purpose or vision and principle or what matters. And now we move on to the third stage, and that is practice or action. And this is a vital stage because, as we said earlier, it is ultimately details and actions that define culture, not the principles themselves. And so the key question for this is, what will we do intentionally to achieve each principle? And the key word is intentional. You know, sometimes when teams or groups or plants, communities go through this process, they sometimes end at the previous stage with principles, and this is why this process often gets a bad name. You know, not more words on a page, you know, not again. This is massively important. Values and principles are a waste of time without the corresponding action, without intentional action. It is like aiming a gun without pulling the trigger. Values and principles will only affect our culture if we are intentional about the corresponding action. Our language is because we feel this is important, therefore we will do that. And for this next piece of work, it's often good to get your team or group community into smaller groups. And for each principle, each group needs to work out what they would do as the corresponding action for each principle. And each group will need to come up with one agreed action per principle, no more. And here are some key questions to think about. When you agreed this principle, because you all agreed it, when you agreed it, what did you envision was happening as it was being outworked? When you said that, what did it look like? Following that, you'll go through one principle at a time, and all groups will kind of feedback on it, and you know, once again on your screen or flip chart, all the actions will be sort of put up, and then you will go through and vote again on which of those actions are most appropriate for each principle, and you'll end up with 2 actions per principle, no more. And it is this ultimate list of actions that will define what you look like as a community or a plant or as a team, what you look like, what you feel like, what you will be like, what others will sense when they join you, what new people will encounter when they join you, and what they will agree to as they join you. By now you will have done quite a bit of work. You've gone through 3 stages. There's a vital 4th one, and that is accountability. And the key question for this is, how do we genuinely hold each other accountable to our actions? And the key word is genuine. Just as this process is muted if we don't follow principle with action, it will falter. It will falter if we don't follow action with accountability. You will begin well and things will slip. This was the stage maybe that the nation of Israel, after the 40 years of setting culture, failed badly on. They began well and they slipped badly. Culture needs constant attention, constant focus, constant energy, constant accountability. The question is, how are you going to do this? And it could be something that covers all the actions together, or which is easier and sort of simpler, or something which is focused on each action. Purpose, principle, practice, accountability, steps toward embedding culture. At the end of this process, you will hopefully have a settled vision for the team or community or plant. You'll have an agreed list of principles or values. You will have an agreed list of actions and a way to hold yourselves accountable to it. Keep at it. I remember, as a community or a plant or a team, this isn't just one aspect of the game, it is the game.